The 6 o'clock news starts right now.
Tonight, a man is in the Bexar County jail in connection with a shooting that happened more than a week ago.
In fact, that shooting happened on MLK Day on the east side, where one person died. Several others were injured.
Our Lee Waldman is live outside of Public Safety Headquarters with what we know about the suspect right now. Lee.
Good evening. The suspect is 18-year-old Ole Wallace. He kept his head down and didn't say a word as officers put him into a police SUV and then took him to the county jail. Wallace is facing several charges, 1 count of murder and 4 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. All of this from a shooting on January 17th on Sprigsdale Boulevard around 7 p.m. Police say Wallace allegedly shot into a crowd of 30 to 60 people who were celebrating MLK Day in the Santa's Place parking lot. 5 people were hospitalized with gunshot wounds. We have learned one of those victims, 61-year-old Johnny Mobley, died from his injuries. Officer Ricardo Guzman tells us tips from the public led to Wallace's arrest.
Our citizens did an outstanding job in coming forward. The community came forward and helped us give good details to our detectives. Our detectives did an extraordinary job, countless hours in locating the suspect and taking him into custody without incident.
Officer Guzman tells us the U.S. Marshals and San Antonio Rapid Response helped in this arrest. At this point, SAPD doesn't believe they're looking for any other suspects in connection with this shooting. Right now, they're still working to determine Wallace's motive. Live outside Public Safety Headquarters, Lee Waldman, KSAT 12 News.
Thank you, Lee. Could the sheriff go over budget on overtime? Sheriff Javier Salazar came before Commissioner's Court today to get permission for another 69,000 hours of mandatory overtime, 69,000 hours of mandatory overtime to help keep the county jail staffed.
Now, commissioners approved his request, though staff say that his office is on track to use the rest of the overtime budget long before the end of the fiscal year.
Garrett Berger talked with the sheriff about the ongoing staffing issues and what he hopes could help slow down the use of overtime.
Yes, sir, Judge. Thank you all for having me up again.
Having to ask for overtime is not a new issue for the Bexar County Sheriff's Office.
Sheriffs have been doing that here in this agency for about 12 years now.
Sheriff Javier Salazar listed a host of issues at play with jail staffing, problems retaining deputies even as they push to hire new ones, absences due to COVID, pandemic precautions, spreading staff more thinly, and a jail population that he thinks is larger than it should be.
We've just got way too many inmates still in-house that could be elsewhere, could be in a mental health facility, could be out with their friends and family if they were able to afford some of the bonds that are out there.
But right now, the sheriff's office has to guard them. The county has $8.3 million budgeted for jail overtime for this budget year, which began in October. Including today, an estimated $5.5 million has been approved so far. But county staff warn at the current burn rate, the sheriff's office will end up spending nearly $14 million on overtime this year. Salazar acknowledges they'll likely go over budget on OT. He says every other major Texas jail is in the same boat.
Other sheriffs and I have talked about what can we do to keep that from happening. We know we're going to blow out our budgets to a certain extent. It's just a matter of trying to minimize that.
Sheriff Salazar thinks the new union contract could help. County commissioners expected to vote on that in 2 weeks.
Deputies' pay would increase by more than 15% over the life of the contract, which he hopes will help recruitment.
More bodies in blue to help shoulder that load is absolutely going to help bring down that overtime.
Salazar says he also needs COVID numbers to subside and more movement on court cases. Garrett Berger, KSAT 12 News.
The Seguin police are searching for the suspect or suspects who stole multiple catalytic converters from a dorm parking lot on the campus of Texas Lutheran University. The incident happened around 1 a.m. on Saturday. At this time, they only have a blurry image of a black SUV to go off of, but police say it's another reminder to residents to be aware of your surroundings. Officials say catalytic converters, which range anywhere from $1,500 to $1,000, then sold at scrap metal yards. New state laws make knowingly buying stolen catalytic converters a state jail felony. One Seguin company says they're very careful about it.
You have to provide documentation such as a title or the vehicle is registered in your name.
They kind of have that honor system of they have to believe if this person's coming in saying, nope, I'm just here to sell it. It's mine, that okay, that's the truth. But so like I said, luckily on the other end, they do work with us when we come to them.
To help with this recent case at TLU, you can call tips into the Guadalupe County Crime Stoppers at 877-204 8477.
The identity of a man hit and killed by a car not yet released, but here's what we do know about that case. Police were called out to Culebra Road near North General McMullen Drive around 12:30 this morning for a man found dead in the middle of the street there. Now, originally, police reported that he was hit by two vehicles that witnesses saw then take off. However, one of those vehicles came back. It is unclear if the man was hit by both those vehicles.
The San Antonio police hoping surveillance video will lead to the arrest of an armed robbery suspect. That incident happening on January 13th at Kim's Express store off West Military Drive. Police said the suspect allegedly demanded money while holding a gun. If you recognize this guy, you're asked to call Crime Stoppers 210-224-STOP.
The latest Omicron-fueled surge of cases is easily outpacing previous COVID waves. There have been more than 125,000 COVID cases reported in Bexar County in the past 5 weeks. Now, that is nearly 27% of all reported cases since the pandemic began in March of 2020. Since then, we've also seen several variants, the most common and recent being Delta and now Omicron. Delta causes more severe illness and Omicron is more infectious. But what about the symptoms they cause? Our Courtney Friedman breaks down the differences that you should look for.
Every COVID variant comes from a mutation, a small accidental change in the virus's genetic code. The changes that help the virus spread more successfully become mainstream, like the Delta and now the Omicron variant.
The variants are still the coronavirus. It's still SARS-CoV-2. It doesn't mutate so much that it becomes a whole different monster.
Infectious disease expert with UT Health San Antonio, Dr. Ruth Berggren says even so, there are small differences in symptoms that people should know about.
It appears that with Omicron, there is less impact on loss of taste or smell. It still exists, maybe 12% or so, whereas previously it was well above a quarter of people were experiencing loss of taste or smell.
If you're suddenly waking up with bad night sweats, that could be Omicron. It's a symptom Berggren says wasn't prominent with Delta and previous variants.
I'm personally hearing a lot of headache with Omicron that I didn't hear so much with Delta.
Knowing the common symptoms of the current variants can give you more insight as to when you should stay home, isolate, and take a COVID test, which Berggren says you should do if you have any symptoms.
But this is the same virus at its core and does carry some of the main symptoms regardless of the variant. That's sore throat, fatigue, muscle aches, and fever. Courtney Friedman, KSAT 12 News.
Now, if you've been exposed or are feeling sick, you need to get tested. You can scan this QR code right here on your screen. That will take you directly to our website where we have a list of all the available testing sites in San Antonio, like Metro Health's pop-up clinics, the Alamo Dome, along with other sites in surrounding areas.
On the news at 5, we showed you some of the backlash that UTSA received after removing the "Come and Take It" slogan from the athletic department. But there were others who actually supported President Taylor Amy's decision to do so. RJ Marquez dives into more of the emails for and against removing that phrase.
Through a public records request, KSAT has obtained nearly 200 emails pertaining to the decision UTSA President Taylor Amy made after he decided the university would no longer use the "Come and Take It" phrase for athletics. Emailers range from donors and alumni to staff and bank executives. Many called Amy a coward for removing the phrase and said he was surrendering to cancel culture. Others said they would no longer donate to the university or buy tickets to Roadrunners games. The UT System Board of Regents also blasted Amy, saying the board did not support abandoning traditions and history that means so much to students, alumni, and other Texans. But some emailers had different views. A UTSA professor wrote in part that it was a difficult but smart leadership decision. Thank you for listening and for your commitment to serve our Hispanic community. Another thanked Amy for having the strength to remove the phrase, writing the longer the issue dragged out, the more damage it would bring to the athletic program and UTSA. While another wrote, I am a native Texan, and until recently, never considered that phrase through the lens of those who might have been negatively impacted. When Amy made the decision, he wrote in an email that the phrase, adopted by the athletics department 6 years ago, had become a distraction from UTSA's mission and become increasingly affiliated with cultural and political issues beyond its traditional historical context. The phrase was removed from the new UTSA athletics facility and all buildings and digital properties associated with the university. RJ Marquez, KSAT 12 News.
What are esports and why should you care about that? Why should you pay attention? What is San Antonio doing to become a major player in this industry? Billions of dollars are going into this. These are some of the questions answered in this week's episode of KSAT Explains. Now, for this episode, we talked to Port San Antonio about the new Esports arena that's set to open on their campus this year. The hope for the new Tech Port Center and Arena is that it not only provides entertainment by hosting esports events, but also that it gives companies another place to potentially find new hires.
If you look at our aerospace customers, robotics, cybersecurity, even the military missions, they are all looking at esports and gaming as a new area to find, recruit, retain talent.
You can learn more about the plans for the Port Tech Center and Arena by watching tonight's episode, KSAT Explains Esports in San Antonio. It debuts right after this newscast at 7 o'clock. You can stream it live on KSAT.com or on the KSAT Facebook page. We then post it in its entirety after that live stream, so you can watch it any time.
Changing landscape of esports. All right. This gray Monday turns into a mostly gray Tuesday, Adam Caskey.
We had a little bit of sun locally, especially those of you farther southwest of downtown and closer to the Rio Grande in particular. A big temperature spread out there today because of the variable cloudiness. Right now in town, we're officially at 50 degrees, dew point of 44. So obviously you don't notice any mugginess out there. 48 Comfort, 45 Bernie. 53 Divine, 55 Hondo, and 63 currently in Uvalde. The farther west you go, the warmer it was because, well, that's where we had a lot of sunshine today. Even Los Maples right now at 64 degrees. As we go through the evening, we'll all have temperatures falling down around 50 degrees this evening after sunset and then down into the 40s overnight tonight. And we're not expecting as much fog tomorrow morning as what we had earlier today, but there is another cold front, a weak one, to talk about that's going to hit us Thursday night. We'll get into those rain chances, what happens behind that front, and where our next system's coming from in just a bit.
Thank you, Adam. You know, it's not a shock to hear that MacArthur High School has a career and technical learning center. Also, no surprise that students involved in these programs interested in building a better community. KSAT 12 photojournalist Tim Stewart takes us to the job site where future electricians and carpenters are helping out Habitat for Humanity, all while polishing their skills.
We have MacArthur students that are practicing the trade of being an electrician. So we have the opportunity to show them hands-on experience on these two homes that they're wiring up. The industry is hurting on electricians, so this is a great opportunity to experience the real world of being an electrician.
Just run your way. I like the chance to do something that's not like boring in a classroom and get my hands on something. And I like to be able to see other people do it, so I know how to do it too. On that side, on that side.
They're applying what they're learning from school out here in the real world.
This is my second time actually going on a job site.
We actually also have carpentry, which they're learning how to build a shed.
It's awesome because it gives kids an opportunity who may not be pursuing a college degree or maybe doing something else other than, you know, what we need in society, the trades, you know, that build our society. What's great about this program is it's teaching you a lot of what you're going to learn out in the field and in an environment where you can mess up or make mistakes or cut something wrong, so that when we get out into the field or whatever we do, we don't make those same mistakes because we made them in class.
So you put the wire first to that. It's nice to be able to learn new stuff here.
Great job by photojournalist Tim Stewart telling that story. Coming up at 6, tensions continue along the Ukraine border, and now the U.S. getting even more prepared. How many troops could deploy if needed?
And up next, a San Antonio staple, mostly empty, but for a good reason. A closer look at the draining process happening right now along the Riverwalk.
Coming up tonight on the Night Beat at 10, we've seen waves of variants during this coronavirus pandemic. Omicron may be the latest, but it is likely not the last. So why is there work being done on a vaccine for this specific variant? We're going to speak to local researchers to find out. Plus,
the Muslim community reacting to the release of a former murder suspect in a cold case out of Windcrest involving one of their own. The latest on the Night Beat.
It is that time of year again. The Riverwalk is being drained. We've been following this since the process began on Sunday.
Always an interesting process when it's done. It's a way to keep the river clean while also cleaning up debris, hidden treasures. The drainage process integral to our downtown. Our Max Massey got a behind-the-scenes look.
And he is also telling us more about the things that they find, always interesting, at the bottom of the river.
The Riverwalk has been drained.
Sue Riley is in town from Colorado. She wants to visit the Alamo City, but she wasn't expecting to find a drained river.
This particular trip, it's sort of ironic, was to spend more time on the Riverwalk, and now we hit it right at the wrong time.
The reason for the drain is to make sure the Riverwalk is in tip-top shape.
It's obviously a big economic generator.
It does cause minor inconveniences in the city. The week-long project closes Alamo Street from Market to Commerce. That way, a crane can scoop up garbage, sediment, and items found at the bottom.
We had a baby stroller. We had chairs, beads, a cell phone. One of my guys was explaining that sometimes people come out because they, an engagement ring, somebody got mad and they threw it, and they're looking to see if we found it. So we haven't found an engagement ring yet.
And draining the river during this time of year, it's also strategic. Not only do tourism numbers dip, but also the Texas heat, it could cause some issues. As Assistant Director of Public Works, Nefi Garza explains, they find it all.
The smell would not be very, very, very pleasant, and it would be very tough for our employees who are also working to be down there in that type of conditions.
If you head down to the Riverwalk, you'll see workers fixing some of the rocks on the side and people fishing out items and fishing out garbage. But this should be over by the start of next week.
So far, so good. If the weather keeps up the way it is, we'll be able to finish just on time.
Max Massey, KSAT 12 News.
Apparently, Max asked if he could go down there and help, just see what he could find.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. Then it would have been Max Muddy.
Oh, gosh.
Ouch.
You
know when you fall for the setup and you're thinking,
it's true. The story is true. He did ask, and they said no.
Just you just changed the ending.
The ending thing I added.
Yeah. Well, the side of the Riverwalk, it's not much to look at, but the sunshine was nice while that lasted.
And I'll give the guy credit there where if this was midsummer, it'd have a different odor down there with all that blood.
Yeah.
Be happy we do it this time of year. A little cooler out there today, and it's easier for the workers as well. Let's talk about our headlines. So below average afternoons on the way. We're not looking at any very cold mornings, but the afternoons are going to be running about 10 degrees below average all the way through Friday. Slight chance of rain with our next week cold front and the next system that's headed our way. And that's going to be Thursday night, early Friday morning. Then a sunny, comfortable, and beautiful weekend on the way. If you're looking forward to just a good, crisp, sunny weekend, wait till you see what we've got. Let's talk about rain, though. We're going to start with this. Of course, we need the rainfall around here. We all know that. Here's some stats. Since January 1st at the airport officially, 0.19 inches, and that's well over an inch and a third below average. And when you look back since December 1st, which is the start of meteorological winter, December 1st, we've only had an inch on top of that. So we're about 2.5 inches below average for meteorological winter thus far. Here's the next system that's going to hit Texas. Not our part of Texas, but North Texas. See, it's dumping snow from Colorado into Kansas and now parts of Oklahoma. There's a big sharp dip in the upper level flow. That's the disturbance that's going to be skirting to the north of us tomorrow. And that's going to keep that energy in North Texas with areas of snow for the Panhandle and right along the Red River, even Lubbock. Probably getting in on some of that action, but staying just north of Dallas. Around here, just another day with a decent amount of cloud cover. More gray than blue in the sky. And then we get into Thursday, a fairly gray day. Friday morning, we're talking Thursday night while we're sleeping through Friday morning. The next system will drop in, and this one should actually have a little impact on us. And we'll have some light areas of rain developing overnight Thursday through Friday morning. Notice our future cast not all that aggressive here in terms of actual rainfalls. So we are anticipating some areas of rain to develop, but we're not anticipating much in terms of accumulations. Though if there's any piece of good news here, the best chance is south of Highway 90. And that's where we have the most significant drought, particularly Dimmitt, LaSalle, and McMullen counties. So you have slightly better chances than folks in the Hill Country and even around San Antonio. Then by Friday, we clear out. So rain chances right now looking about 30% Thursday night and through Friday morning, and then just sunshine as we go through the weekend. So no chance of rain there. All right, let's talk temperatures. Look at the highs today, particularly Around South and Central Texas, Del Rio nearly 80, 78 degrees Del Rio, Uvalde 71, Carrizo Springs 70, but only 53 in New Braunfels, 56 in Gonzales, and 59 here in San Antonio. So as you look at the cloud cover throughout the day, the satellite trend, the really thick gray clouds really held tight. Basically east of I-10, north of San Antonio, and for the most part locally and east of town. And that, of course, kept temperatures down. Kerrville 47 now. Meanwhile, Del Rio 74. Carrizo Springs 63, and we're an even 50 in town here. By tomorrow morning, most of us low to mid 40s, but you get into the hill country, we'll have some upper 30s. We'll say 43 in Hondo, 41 Canyon Lake, 44 San Antonio. Then by tomorrow afternoon, not a big warm up. We're just looking at 50s across the board. So those of you along the Rio Grande today in the 70s, big difference tomorrow. Long sleeves all day. Even Helotes 53 along Timberwood Park, Elmendorf, and Lavernia 57 tomorrow. And that's going to come with a fair amount of gray in our sky. So not a whole lot in terms of sunshine tomorrow. That's why we're keeping temperatures in the 50s. Mid 50s through Thursday and Friday. Weak cold front Thursday night. It's really just going to pick up the wind a bit on Friday and give us a very brief light freeze on Saturday morning. Otherwise, sunny and 60s this weekend.
That'll be nice. Thank you, Adam.
All right. Spurs in Houston and the Rockets have proven not to be a pushover for San Antonio.
No, because remember, we lost to the Rockets. When I say we mean the San Antonio Spurs lost to the Rockets at home during that 7-game homestand. So this is a road trip for the Spurs. They got to win this game tonight because this is a team that is struggling worse than the Spurs. And is that backfield, the backcourt, of course, we're talking about DeJounte and Derek, is just what it's advertised as far as the defensive side of the ball. And the big question, return or retire for a number of big-name quarterbacks, including that guy coming up. San Antonio Spurs resume their I-10 rivalry tonight when they face the Rockets in Houston. Both teams have been short on success this season. The Spurs winning only 17 of the first 47 games. Winners of only 2 out of the last 10 games, including Sunday night's defeat by the Philadelphia 76ers, 115-109. At the same time, the Rockets are winners of only 4 of their last 10 games. They're coming off a 105-103 loss to the Golden State Warriors last Friday and dropped to 14th in the Western Conference. One bright spot for the Spurs this season has been the defensive play of the backcourt between DeJounte Murray and Derek White, who are averaging over 3 steals a game combined. Has Derek given any thought about he and DeJounte making the NBA's all-defensive team?
I ain't really thought much about it. I mean, it doesn't really help much to think about it, but I mean, obviously, just try to go out there, compete, make it tough for them. I mean, DJ leading the league in steals, just the pest that he is. So they think that he's deserving, and probably get a few votes. I mean, he was second team like 2 years ago, so he's done it before.
Now, that said, when defense fuels the Spurs offense, Derek White, by the way, was asked at this morning's shoot-around in Houston if it's playing out the way most of us expected that the Spurs have a strong defensive backcourt.
Yeah, I mean, we can switch on who we're guarding. I mean, sometimes he drove to the hoop, so I'll take his man and vice versa. So it makes it easy for both of us, and just trying to just keep getting better and better.
All right, early tip time tonight, 7 o'clock. Highlights for you tonight on the Night Beats.
Pro football coverage, powered by Davis Law Firm.
Congratulations to Cowboys linebacker Micah Parsons, been named the Rookie of the Year, the Defensive Rookie of the Year by the Professional Football Writers of America. That honor comes after the Pro Bowler and All-Pro posted a franchise rookie record of 13 sacks and tied for the lead in the NFL with 20 tackles for a loss, the most by a Cowboys linebacker since Sean Lee in 2017. Now that the Green Bay Packers have been eliminated from the NFL playoffs by the San Francisco 49ers, the biggest question is, will Aaron Rodgers return as their quarterback? There has been a complete disconnect with Aaron in the storied franchise front office after picking quarterback Jordan Love in the 2020 draft. After flirting with retirement, Rodgers returned for his 17th season, playing in 16 games, throwing for over 4,000 yards for 37 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. Following the 13-10 upset by the 49ers in the NFC divisional round, head coach Matt LaFleur was asked if he had any insight on whether or not Rodgers will return or retire.
I sat down and talked to Aaron today for quite some time. You know, I think we're all a little numb to the situation right now. And so I would say that what we talked about, I'm definitely going to keep between himself and him and myself. But, you know, we're hopeful that he'll be back next year, obviously. I mean, this guy has done so much for such a long period of time for this organization, for this city. for this team. And so, I want to be respectful of his process, whatever he needs to go through to make the best decision for himself. And certainly we would love for him to be a Packer and be a Packer until the day he decides to retire.
And it appears as 7-time Super Bowl champion Tom Brady is leaning towards retirement. On a podcast with Jim Gray, Brady said it's not his decision alone, it's his family's. He brought up his wife, Gisele Bundchen. She deserves what she needs from me as a husband, and my kids deserve what they need from me as a dad. We consider all the time and effort he puts in to get ready for the season. After that playing in the season, you're right. I mean, there just comes a time we have to consider others, and nobody will fault him if he decides to step down now.
Yeah.
Not at all.
It would be strange, though, next year not to have an Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady in the league.
Absolutely, it would be, yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Greg.
Our KSAT Q&A up next. You might have seen some headlines recently looking at a study that examined the risk of diabetes in kids after a COVID-19 infection. As we like to say on this segment, we're going to separate the facts from the fear and the fiction when it comes to this. So today we're joined by Dr. Jane Lynch, a pediatric endocrinologist at UT Health San Antonio. Dr. Lynch, thank you for being here. Let's first start with this study. What did it look at? What did it find?
So it's actually 2 studies that came out of U.S. data. We've been following this literature in Asia and in Europe, and we've been suspicious this was the case. These 2 very, very large database studies that we're looking at, in the first one, children, the incidence rate of diabetes in the past year, past time of the pandemic compared to the past, and compared to children with and without COVID. And the second study was looking specifically at kids who've had COVID and the rate of onset of new onset diabetes. So both of these had incredibly similar outcomes of what they found of close to doubling in the first one of the larger study of risk for developing diabetes after having had COVID, after all the symptoms settled down, at least a month later. And we are worried because we have seen the same thing. Typically 3 to 5 months after COVID, we're having these children come into us, often through the emergency room, pretty sick with new onset diabetes.
Talk about what this means for San Antonio. I mean, obviously, we already have a high rate of diabetes. Are we also seeing what they're seeing in this study that comes from the CDC?
We are. We've been tracking, and we actually have had a crew of volunteer staff putting together our database looking at new onset. And it's both type 1 and type 2 here. It's at least a tripling of our rates in San Antonio. The kids are quite ill. Most end up in the ICU with the new onset ketones and high blood sugar. Is it common to have diabetes? No. I mean, it's still, the odds are slim of your child developing diabetes after COVID, but they're probably 2 to 3 times higher than they were before COVID, several months later. So unfortunately, it often is missed early on because it looks a lot like flu and people are having a hard time getting in to see their primary care doctors. So we really want to get the word out. It's data that mimics what was being seen in adults. However, in children, it's both type 1 and type 2, probably for different mechanisms.
We've talked on this very segment about how family history plays a big role in diabetes. We have such a prevalent rate of that in our own community. So for kids who already have diabetes, who get COVID-19, are they at increased risk of serious symptoms?
Yes, and so that's not what we've seen other literature coming out, and that's been our experience as well, is that if you have diabetes, either type 1, which is insulin-dependent juvenile diabetes, or type 2, more insulin-resistant inherited form of diabetes, both of those, when you become ill, COVID in particular makes your blood sugar shoot up. And we know that from adults. We have probably the pager's gone off nonstop for the last few months of our poor families with kids with diabetes whose children are positive for COVID, really struggling to control the blood sugars, needing extra insulin and sometimes needing to come into the hospital.
Does this mean that all kids have a higher risk of diabetes after getting COVID, or just kids with certain conditions?
We don't know that yet, but we hope to figure that out. One of the problems with this study that they reported is they can't tell the difference for what was type 1, what was type 2. And what's interesting to me is that in this timeline, none of the kids would have been vaccinated under age 18. So that'll be interesting to see too. COVID attacks the beta cells directly in one way. It also causes massive inflammation in another way. So I would expect that this is mostly kids that are either predisposed, they have family histories of type 1 diabetes, thyroid disease, autoimmune diseases, or they have families with high rates of type 2 diabetes. And both those kids I would consider to be high risk categories.
Before we go here, let's let people know what are the signs to watch out for. If they're concerned that their kids may have developed diabetes, what should they be looking for?
So often, if they're in a family with type 2 diabetes, someone in the house probably has a blood sugar meter to check a blood sugar. But the symptoms of a high blood sugar are trying to flush that sugar out of your system. So you're urinating the sugar out in urine and you're going to the bathroom more, and then thirsty because you're urinating so much water, headache, fatigue, you develop some acids that give you stomach aches and vomiting. Problem is, it often looks like the flu. And a lot of our kids have been on telemed visits or urgent care visits and sent home as flu when nobody checked their blood sugar.
Dr. Jane Lynch with UT Health San Antonio, a pediatric endocrinologist. Thank you so much for your time. I also want to, just to repeat again, you were seeing a tripling of the new rate of new onset cases in San Antonio. That's something right there that, we better start paying attention to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's both type 1 and type 2 in families that have those risk factors. So we don't know. We would expect vaccination would reduce the inflammation and risk for this, but we really are going to be following this for data. And we're highly recommending that for all of our families who have family members with diabetes.
Dr. Lynch, thank you for being here. We appreciate the information.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity. Have a nice night.
You too.
You too.
We'll be right back. Tensions are high in Ukraine as Russia continues to mass troops on the border amid fears of a possible invasion. U.S. and NATO allies urging a diplomatic solution while also stepping up their military aid to the region.
ABC's Elizabeth Schultze has the latest from Washington.
As the crisis in Ukraine intensifies, the U.S. and its NATO allies are seeking to project unity in the face of Russian aggression.
Spoken with every one of our NATO allies in person, virtually, and we're all on the same page.
President Biden with a stark warning that Russia will face severe consequences if its more than 100,000 troops on the border with Ukraine invade. A senior Biden administration official tells ABC News economic consequences may include export controls and sanctions as part of an attempt to cripple Russia's economy.
There are going to be serious economic consequences if he moves.
And while diplomatic conversations are set to continue between France, Germany, Russia, and Ukraine in Paris Wednesday, the U.S. and NATO countries already sent weapons to Ukraine and are prepared to offer military support to NATO members in Eastern Europe. 8,500 U.S. troops are now on heightened alert for rapid deployment to the region. The Pentagon adding that number could increase. President Biden says some of those troops could move into Eastern European countries in the near term, but reiterated no American or NATO combat troops will go into Ukraine.
We have no intention of putting American forces or NATO forces in Ukraine.
What is being deployed? Ammunition, weapons, and other equipment bound for Ukraine. Russia still vows it has no plans to invade, yet it's ramping up its troop presence on the Ukrainian border and sending military trains to neighboring Belarus.
Following a similar move by the U.S., Canada has now decided to withdraw the families of its embassy's staff in Ukraine. Elizabeth Schultze, ABC News, Washington.
Little mix of some sun, some gray today, but still no rain to talk about.
Yeah, we still need it.
You're right, but you said the word mix and kind of brought back memory. I'm just glad we don't have any of that wintry mix to talk about anytime soon. I mean, some temperatures on the cool side, running a little below average, but we're not talking about any big swings within the foreseeable future. 50 degrees right now, relative humidity at 80%, a dew point temperature of 44. And you go through the rest of the evening by 11 o'clock, just in the upper 40s, and we'll be down in the mid 40s to start the day tomorrow, about 44 degrees around San Antonio. And that's not far from where we were earlier today. Take a look at our almanac data along with that time lapse. We were 45 earlier this morning and we only made it up to 59. And I think tomorrow our temperature spread will be even tighter. We're not even going to have a very big jump from the morning low to the afternoon high. Now today we had a huge difference from Del Rio at 78 to New Braunfels at 53. I think Bulverde, the warmest you got, was about 48 degrees today because of those low, thick clouds. Obviously, we had plenty of sunshine closer to the Rio Grande, and then a lot of cloud cover locally and particularly north and east of town, where temperatures were in the 50s today. But tonight, we'll all be cooling off and settling down in the low to mid 40s with some 30s in parts of the hill country. Kerrville 39, Fredericksburg 37. Then by the afternoon, most of us just in the 50s. So I know we had some 70s along the Rio Grande today. Del Rio 78 tomorrow. Big difference. Down to 55 for the afternoon high. The clouds that we had overhead are going to spread across the rest of our area and keep us generally cool tomorrow. And really, all the way through Friday, we're talking afternoon highs about 10 degrees below average in the mid 50s. This weekend, though, we see a little warm up and we'll be back into the 60s, probably mid 60s for part of the weekend. And the average high is 64, so that's seasonable, near average for this time of year. Let's talk dew points. Right now, they're in the 40s. And that's comfortable. A lack of mugginess, of course, in the air and not overly dry outside. But we will see a little change. First, a drop. We'll have even drier air move in Friday, Saturday behind our very weak cold front that hits Thursday night. So we'll have even drier air in place. You may notice the extra dry skin or chapped lips Friday, Saturday. And then into next week, we could actually have a little hint of humidity. By Tuesday, a little taste of mugginess in the air for a brief period of time. All right, let's talk about our overall weather pattern. We mentioned those clouds that held tight throughout the day, basically right through half of Bexar County and eastward. The next system to affect Texas is right now moving through Colorado. That's thrown snow into Kansas and parts of Oklahoma. This dip in the upper level flow, that's going to stay to the north of us. So all that moisture is staying to the north of us and all the energy associated with it. Actually, our next system that'll give us a weak cold front is basically partially northern Alaska and parts of British Columbia here in western Canada. You see that nice swirl. Part of the backside of that, we're going to get a little bit of energy driving southward. And I just have to show you this imagery because it's just so beautiful. Oh, I love this water vapor imagery. See the little upper level high here, upper level low, the high over low block, little Rex block there, keeping this upper level low pressure system stuck out in the Pacific. Big plume of moisture headed northward toward Alaska. Beautiful imagery we have these days. Beautiful imagery. Okay, back to what we're expecting around here. North Texas, some areas of snow tomorrow, and that's going to stay far, far away from us. We'll just have a decent amount of cloud cover. Thursday, a gray day, and then we get into Thursday night, a few showers developing through early Friday morning. Best chances south of San Antonio. Not a drought buster, though. We're really not anticipating much in terms of accumulations, but we'll take what we can get. So 44 in the morning, 54 in the afternoon. Mainly gray, long sleeves throughout the day, and that's going to be the case all the way through Friday. A little breezy Friday as well, but the weekend looking good after a very light freeze Saturday morning.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
The Buzz is next. Reigning Jeopardy champ Amy Schneider hit another milestone on the game show. She now has the second longest winning streak in Jeopardy's history. Last night, Schneider won her 39th game, breaking the 38-game record set last October. She is now only behind Ken Jennings, who with 74 wins holds the record of most consecutive game wins.
She is also the first woman to earn more than $1 million in winnings in regular season play. Beijing Olympics organizers are keeping up with the tradition of making condoms available to athletes. Despite detailed social distancing guidelines intended to curb the spread of COVID-19. In the playbook measures, athletes are instructed to minimize physical interactions, such as hugs, high fives, and handshakes.
But here's some condoms.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to go together.
Sorry, that wasn't in the script. Also, they are encouraged to maintain a social distance of at least 2 meters from fellow competitors. The games set to start on February 4th in Beijing.
Okay.
Rest of this week running below average, at least for the afternoons, with highs in the mid-50s. So a bit on the cool side, but not as cold as what we've seen recently. And overall, a fair amount of cloud cover, and that could lead to a few showers Thursday night. We're crossing our fingers, but right now, we're not expecting a whole lot in terms of accumulations again. Then breezy on Friday. This weekend, feeling good, and we're looking at a bit of a warming trend into next week.
Weekend does look good. Thanks, Adam, and thank you for watching the news at 6.
We'll see you on the Night Beat at 10.